Hey there. Today is a little bit more of an advanced topic video. This was actually based on a comment I got on one of my videos, a question, somebody asking me if I can talk a little bit more about Donald Maass's concept of microtension. And while microtension or tension in a story didn't originate with Maass, it's important to understand that he has had a huge role in expanding that subject. He's got a bunch of great books on the subject, and I'll link to them down in the description below. But I want to talk a little bit about what it is. Microtension is not tension that is produced by the plot. It's not the high stakes or the grand adventure that the characters are on. It's not the lost love between two people or the reunification, or it's not any of that stuff. It's not any of the big stuff. It's not any of the macro tension. Instead, microtension is something that exists in a story that pulls the reader through the story, making them hang on every word. And the question is, how do we do that? Most of us have read books that kept us 100% completely engaged. We were constantly curious. What's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? And that is microtension. In fact, microtension is that very question. What is going to happen next? And understanding how to weave that into your story, I think, is one of the things that separates really good writers from average writers. So learning how to do this is going to help your writing considerably. Microtension primarily comes from conflicting emotion rather than explicit conflict. And because it comes from conflict and emotion, it most often happens inside of a character, not actually between one character and another. No, this is the internal struggle. This is the thing that drives your protagonist in two opposite directions. The thing that forces them to make an impactful choice that will shape the rest of the story. Readers are going to wonder, what choice are they going to make? How is this going to be resolved? It can also actually happen between a character and a reader. If you know that your readers are going to have a particular kind of emotional response to a scene, then giving your character a different sort of emotional response, something that is in tension with how the reader feels, can produce this as well. That's a lot harder to do, so I would recommend, if you're trying to learn this style of writing, that you start with conflicting desires inside the character themselves. Microtension is an absolutely wonderful thing, and it keeps us reading, which means it's an absolutely valuable technique. It can be used to pull through more boring parts of a story or slower parts of a story and keep the pace clipping along. The question is, how do you actually do it? It's one thing to talk about writing theories, and it's another thing to actually understand how to apply them on the page. This is how you apply them. You're going to be contrasting words against each other. And there are three main ways that you can do this. The first is to pick two words that are alike, but have slight differences in their meaning. Using two words together that are alike, but are slightly different, is going to highlight for the reader that there is disparity there. There's a gap there. And that gap is going to make them curious. They're going to wonder, well, what's going on here? Those two things are not quite the same. How is this going to be resolved? Creating that point of tension. The second thing you can do is you can use words that are contrary, words that are opposed but are not actually opposites. You might take a word like cold and you might take a word like burn. Those are two different things, right? Where do burns come from? They come from heat. Is cold heat? No, but you can burn somebody with cold. And so it creates a tension automatically in between the words. And then the third way that you can do this on a practical level is that you can actually give a direct contradiction, right? Fire and water, two separate things, elementally opposed. Hero and villain, diametrically opposed states. It's important to understand that the more contradictory the terms, the more explicit the tension will be, but the easier it is to also mess it up. Because the more often you have things that are opposed to each other, the more used to it the reader gets, and so the harder it is to maintain the tension at the right level. This is something that will take a lifetime to master. I certainly haven't mastered it. I'm constantly working on this. But understanding microtension can do a lot to engage your readers and make sure that they keep going until the end.